Well, Kaz hummed. His lips curled into a smile, elongated spikes protruding from gums stained crimson. You wanted to tell me something that night. He giggled, the full wrath of the trickster coming out. What did you want to tell me? Come on, Sammy, spit it out. Sam was struggling. He coughed up writhing scarlet, and I realized, my heart in my throat, that Kaz was forcing the words from his mouth. You were with him, Sam whispered, sputtering up slimy red lumps. Kaz chuckled. And? Speak. I command you, he mocked. Come on, why so quiet? You were quite the vocal one when you split my skin apart. Sam screamed, his cry hollowing me out, an animal-like wail. Every fucking day. He was all you talked about. Sam dropped into his stomach, and I could see the words physically bleeding from his lips. We had dinner, talked, and hung out, and he was what came out of your mouth. You thought you were invincible, he choked. That you could have me and him. And you were so fucking sly about it. You were greedy, Charlie. You were fucking cruel. When Sam lurched forward, coughing, beads of red dripping down his chin, I felt my body stiffen. Kaz didn't move, dark eyes glued to Sam. Sam didn't stop. I don't think he could anymore. His body was limp and wrong, his arms by his sides, rivulets of red running down his chin. The words running from his mouth were intimate and personal and forced from his lips. And that night, I came to break things off with you, he whispered, violently retching up each word. I wanted to tell you I was done with your games, that you were screwing with my head and making me fucking crazy. He broke into a sob, which turned into a laugh. But you didn't even answer the door. He did. His grin widened, scarlet slew beating down his neck. It would always be him. His eyes found Kaz narrowing. And I fucking hated you for it. Kaz grinned. Toxic. I love it. I had an excuse. This time his words were unnatural, violently torn from his mouth, ripping open his lips. Sam swayed back and forth, a childish giggle escaping him. When I lost you, I finally had an excuse to torture the devil wearing your face. And I actually enjoyed it. Risking a glance at him, I knew Sam wasn't lying. He meant each cut he'd sliced into Kaz, every puncture through his flesh. It was his fucked up way of justifying his torture, when in reality, he had hurt him. And even now, after actively fighting to save Kaz, Sam was still convinced he was a devil. Kaz let out a breathy laugh, and it was so human, his head tipping to the side, his eyes rolling, like he was laughing at a bad joke. But then I saw the inhuman twitch in his lips. Wait, he murmured. You think I loved him? He grabbed Sam by the cheek, forcing him to look at him, his grin widening. I did. The trickster whispered, dragging his teeth across Sam's neckline. That's what you wanted to hear, right? That I was always in love with him. That you were just, He broke into a manic giggle. A fucking distraction, Sammy? That I reveled in the touch of his skin. That I fucked him to mark him as mine. Stop, Sam whispered. I had never witnessed the true unraveling of a human mind before. Until now. I watched the light fizzle from Sam's eyes, his jaw going slack. His body went limp, swaying to the left before crumpling to the ground. He curled into the fetal position, eyes vacant, choking up slithering scarlet. Before I could speak, Kaz stepped forward, crouched over Sam's trembling body, and ripped his spine from his back, starting gently, before yanking it free with a violent tug. Sam's body flopped with a wet smack, his entrails pooling onto the concrete. It's true, Sammy, Kaz sighed, waving the bloody vertebrae. I liked you, but you weren't him. And I'm sorry for that. Kaz's gaze flashed to me, curious, and something in my chest jerked. I could feel them. Words, tangled thoughts. Intimate thoughts I kept down, kept suppressed, creeping into my mouth in a bloody mouthful of sour saliva. My throat contorted, my mouth prying open, like my roommate was physically forcing it open. I don't regret what I did to you. I don't regret what I did to you. I don't regret what I did to you. Kaz smirked, but he let go, letting the words trickle back down. Anything you want to tell me, Nin? He asked. Yes. The words were there, choking me, hemorrhaging my throat. They were wrong, selfish, and yet so human. They were mine. Still, I knew his answer. Kaz was playing with me. Of course he was. He let the words slide back down. Dalvi, he said, the moon dripping from his tongue. Looks like I won the game. He yanked me up, pulling me close, his mouth dancing across the bridge of my ear. After everything you've done to us, he murmured, chuckling. Do you really think you're even in his line of sight? I couldn't reply, and he squeezed my fingers in his. Walk with me. In the corner of my eye, Sam's body was already rewriting itself into existence. The irony of Sam Fuller also being a devil was almost comedic. I need your help, Kaz said, pulling me up stone steps leading to the town hall entrance. We have a situation with the king, he announced, twisting around to face me. Now, it's usually easy to re-educate a human mind and fill them with her light, Kaz said. I had to guess the cult was no doubt using his intelligence. However, sometimes, rarely, the human mind will, let's say, he clucked his tongue, fight back. Loud, thudding footsteps caught me off guard. Large wooden doors were violently thrown open, and a shadow stepped, or rather stumbled, from pristine white light, crashing straight into me. The first thing I saw was the grotesque crown glued to his skull, its jagged prongs slicing into his forehead. Thick brown curls hung in soaking strands, clinging to half-lidded eyes that blinked rapidly as if I were a hallucination. He was both human and not, his skin ice cold, almost slimy against mine, clammy arms immediately wrapping around me. His back was mutilated, his spine protruding through ugly flaps of flesh, festering with infection. The remnants of a light blue hospital gown clung to the straining muscles. It was only when I really stared at him, really took him in, that I realized, my heart diving into my throat. Poppy was right. The Bolivia House kids couldn't be saved. I could see where his crown had been forced directly into the meat of his brain, reddish sludge stained moonlight seeping down his temples. The reluctant king, I thought, my chest aching. He was still fighting. Rowan Beck stared at me, moonlit eyes blinking rapidly, struggling to take me in. Nin, he whispered in a sob, his lips parting in a silent cry. I saw that curl in his lip, that ignition of hatred in his eyes. With his memories restored, he knew what I did to him. He staggered back, unsure where to go. Trapped. In his eyes, I was still the monster. I opened my mouth to reply when his body jolted violently, contorting, sending him to his knees, screaming. Guards, members of the cult, were already grabbing Rowan, pulling him to his feet and dragging him back inside. No. His voice shuddered, a soft moan sharpening into a cry. He kicked and screamed, his body betraying him, weak and wrong, while his head thrashed, eyes wild. Get your fucking hands off me! He shrieked, something snapping in his expression, a feral contortion overtaking him. His lips curled back, moonlight drowning his eyes, and in a blur, his body jerked violently, elongated teeth snapping like an animal, tearing off a guard's head. He was free for maybe a second, crawling back on his hands and knees, territorial. Like a cornered animal, he backed away, eyes frantic, a low line escaping his throat when the cult members swarmed him. Rowan lunged toward me, but they caught him, forcing him onto a surgical bed, his struggling wrists and ankles strapped down. The king is very sick, Nin. Kaz spoke over Rowan's howl once an IV drip was forced into his writhing wrist. He snarled, his contorting body immediately shoved onto stained pillows. Let me go, he whimpered, his voice breaking, seeping into a whine when he tried to sit up, snapping at his attackers. Kaz stepped over the threshold, pulling me with him. He currently has perforations inside his brain, which means, yes, in a way, our goddess is leaking out of him, temporarily awakening the assimilated vessel. Kaz, Rowan snarled. He was forced onto his back, his face lodged against soiled bedsheets. His body arched violently before slamming back onto the bed. You're a fucking asshole and a traitor, he gritted out, needles and tubes being forced into him. He fought against them, razor-sharp teeth grazing the pillows. Get a hold of yourself. You're being controlled. Kaz nodded to me with a smile. For now, I guessed, he was king. Keep him company and comfortable, of course, he said. The king's vessel must be in a subdued state before we reassimilate. Reassimilate? Kaz's words tangled in my mind, confusion clouding my thoughts. I had never heard of reassimilating vessels before. However, this was luck I wasn't expecting, and I was going to take full advantage of it. Once the doors were shutting on a group of guards led by Kaz, I was at Rowan's bedside in 3 strides. I knew the Rowan in front of me was a different person from the boy I had last seen. This Rowan knew the truth about his first death and my cruel sacrifice, what I had done to him. He knew about his murder. I could still see that distrust sparkling in half-glazed over eyes. He was trembling, his body still jerking left to right. His mouth had been cruelly taped shut, dazed eyes glaring at me. I couldn't stop myself, reaching out and entangling his clammy fingers with mine. Instead of responding, I slid the knife I'd hidden out of my pocket. I'm going to get her out of you. Reaching forward, I ripped the tape off his mouth. Ow! Rowan hissed. He tried to straighten up, his restraints yanking his squirming body back. What are you talking about? I was in the cult that sacrificed you, I whispered. He nodded slowly, unfocused eyes flickering. I was right. He averted his gaze. Apologize. I couldn't resist a dry laugh. I'm sorry for sacrificing you to my mother's evil cult. Rowan stuck out his bottom lip, a true man-child. Whatever. He still didn't look at me when I brushed sticky strands of hair from his eyes. But when his gaze finally caught mine, maybe by accident, his expression seemed to soften. He leaned closer, almost toppling off the bed. You killed me, and now you're trying to fix it, he sighed, his breath dancing across my cheek. I don't know if that makes you worse or just fucking pathetic. I found myself paralyzed with him so close, his eyes searching mine. His breath was warm and steady against my lips. Slowly he leaned in, his fingers skimming my cheek, turning me toward him. The kiss felt both right and wrong, especially since his heart belonged to someone else. But it was warm, fleeting, sending my thoughts into a tailspin. I pulled away when he didn't, my breath catching. Sorry. His snort took me off guard, and I remembered he was an insufferable asshole. Nah, you're sorry you liked it. I was seriously considering taping his mouth shut. But then he kissed me again, this time softer, gentler, his fingers cradling my cheek, tiptoeing down my arm and grasping my wrist, pulling me closer. I almost dropped my knife, giving in, falling into him. I almost gave in to that selfish part of me secretly enjoying the light drowning his eyes. When he pulled away, his eyes were warm, human. Nin? His voice was soft, his lips inches from mine. I don't hate you, you know, he whispered. You were protecting your brother. I couldn't look at him. Instead of losing myself, I focused on the ritual. In the past, perhaps there was something between us. But it was clear, from my memories, and even presently, I wasn't good for him. I wanted to believe in reincarnation. Maybe next time we would find each other, fate entwining us, bringing us together. On Bolivia House's doorstep. Yanking up what was left of his sleeve, a shiver slipped down my spine. I could just about make out the phantom word I'd sliced under his elbow, etched into his skin. I didn't realize how cruel I was, how painful the marking scarring his flesh was. Maybe not. Maybe, in all realities and all versions of us, I would always be a stain on his soul. Gently taking his left palm, I glimpsed Nathur. Rowan flinched when I pulled up the material of his hospital gown, revealing his heart. Whoa, easy. Your hands are cold. He folded his arms stubbornly. You're gonna do something stupid. I can tell. Ignoring him, I focused on Thalix. I started with his hand, slicing the blade through the word. Moonlight was supposed to seep out, bleeding from the entrance point. but all that did pull out was buzzing static, slick on the knife and running down his palm. Something slimy wound its way up my throat. I had known about Rowan's ability to replicate ever since I discovered my roommate's secret. I had watched him die in the car wreck, his body twisted like a pretzel. Realization hit me, cruel and unforgiving, as I retracted the blade. The severing ritual only worked when performed on the original body. That's what Jonas said. And through this whole ordeal, the Rowan beside me had been nothing more than his static replica. His shadow. You are funny, Nin. I shuffled back as he sat up on the bed, pulling his arms free from their restraints, plucking at the tubes feeding into him. I jumped to my feet, my heart in my throat, as he dove off the bed, stretching. The king regarded me with a curious smile, one brow raised. Holes perforating my brain. He mimicked Rowan's voice. His cruel gaze held me in place. That's naive, even for you. His lips split into a grin. You are fascinating. Honestly, you have me well and truly captivated. I thought for sure you would realize that the man you so hopelessly fawn over would never, and I mean ever, and trust me, I'm inside his head. I'm entangled in his thoughts, his memories, his shameless fantasies he keeps to himself. He chuckled. Nina, surely by now you know this man is like a leech. He attaches himself to the people closest to him because he doesn't want to be left alone. Rowan is a parasite. The king mocked a pout. You thought differently. Oh, but what if I told you the truth? Would you rethink your choice to fall for an empty shell? I had a feeling she would fall for it. Imogen stood in the doorway, an amused smile curled on her lips. She embraced her queen status, draped in a cloak of adorned human flesh and blood sculpting her frame. Blonde streaks of hair hung in moonlit eyes, cherry lips curved into a triumphant smile. Nina's quite brainless. Brainless, thoughtless, everything less. The king studied me with amusement. He leaned forward, his breath tickling my face. I want to show you something, Nina. He grabbed my shoulders, escorting me from the room, through a wooden door and down cold concrete steps. The king's grip was unrelenting. I'm curious, he murmured. Is being so oblivious a human thing or a you thing? I didn't respond, my body stiff, my eyes glued in front of me. There was a flickering orange light, getting brighter and brighter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've known about my ability and your ability to be copied, rendered, and molded into our perfect soldiers with endless bodies made of static that can never be hurt, never truly die. He hummed. But you chose to turn a blind eye. When really, Nin. His fingernails were cruel, slicing into the bare flesh of my shoulder. You should have been asking yourself, why? Like, why are we replicating? He mocked my voice. Why do we keep coming back? When you had the answer all along. I mean, you did see me. I trickled from your friend's flesh, your blade slicing me from him. I was the very first shadow peeled from Rowan Beck's heart. I caught a smile flickering in the candlelight. We descended the stairs leading into a stone tunnel filled with candles. I noticed moonlight spilling across the floor, scalding my feet as I was forced into its path. But I couldn't stop myself. My body was hers. My thoughts hers to twist. Cult members stood, making way for us. Mom was among them, her eyes wide, smile proud. I passed her and her lips broke out into a grin. I'm so proud of you, she mouthed, her eyes filled, twisting with lunacy. The king clung to me like I was his bride, linking our arms. I want to introduce you to some friends of mine, he murmured. They've been excited to see you again. Moonlight led me and I was transfixed, almost dancing towards it. Towards her. The room I found myself in was filled, drowned in her. So bright my vision burned, but I couldn't move my arms. She was singing in my head, gleeful, her melody echoing in my skull. When her light started to let up, figures bled from the blur. I thought they were cult members at first, but they weren't standing. Instead, 3 bodies were tied back to back, drifting in her light, as if preserved in her lumine. They were human, so painfully human, blood still staining their clothes, eternally frozen in stardust that glittered on their cheeks like diamonds beneath heavenly light. Something squirmed, coiling around my spine when the king strode over to one of them, and, with the toe of his boot, rolled the body onto its back. I had known who they were the moment I stepped inside. But my mind didn't fully register it until I saw the gaping cavern in his chest, where I had cruelly torn out his heart. His head lolled forward, tousled curls falling into his face. Rowan. Kaz's gunshot wound stuck out, ugly and cavernous, his head resting on Rowan's shoulder. Imogen was still dressed in blood-soaked, fluffy pajamas, tangled blonde curls glued to her face. It was a mockery, a combination of their first and second deaths. When I carved out their hearts, and when their outlines were stolen. But if they were here, if the original bodies of the Bolivia House residents were here... I took a step back, goose flesh prickling across the back of my neck. Where was I? Nithia has always been able to control and mold our second skins, the king said. She has bled inside our silhouettes, our outlines, twisting us into her playthings. His voice echoed in my head as I found myself stumbling toward my roommates. But, the king continued when I fell to my knees. I barely felt the impact. She was already singing inside my head, louder. I crawled forward and she let me lay him on my lap and grasp his cheeks, cradling them. He was so cold. His skin was almost hard and slick with moonlight. What if she reached further? Behind me, the king fell to his knees next to me, almost in prayer. What if Nithia walked on this earth once more? Not as a shadow, a puppeteer, but reborn skin and bones. I barely felt him. There was only her, singing to me from the skylight, trickling into my blood, my veins entwining around my bones. I felt stone-cold hands press something into mine. I felt the blade prick my palm, and I knew exactly what I had to do. She was so soft, so gentle, coaxing my hand when it sliced through the first word. Luha. This time I saw it, reveled in it, the trickling moonlight flowing from the wound. Sever her light from us. The king's lips found my ear as I dragged my blade through Nathur. And let her reach them. Yes. Her voice choked my mouth, her melody suffocating my throat. In flesh and blood and bone, he whispered. Part of me was resisting. Jonas never told me about the end of the severing ritual, so I looked for it myself. The one performing the ritual must be the exact same person who performed the binding, and as punishment for failing in offering, the one enacting the severing must be sacrificed. So, in a way, I guess, I was finally getting my karma. Still, the moon held me in a soft yet unbreakable grip. She had my mind, my body, my blood and bones, and like I was dancing, unable to stop, unable to steady myself. I stabbed the blade into Thalix. I watched his skin splinter apart, rupturing, moonlight pouring out. And she was so beautiful. I held out my own hands to touch her, to cup her into my palms. You intrigue me, Nin, the king murmured. You came in here as a player, and have inevitably become a pawn. He tipped his head, curious. But you don't look like you regret it, which is, well, it's interesting. He chuckled. Now I'm inside your head, your oh so naive thoughts. You're hoping everything will go back to normal, even in a world without you in it. He leaned closer, his face glitching in and out of view, unraveling as moonlight expanded around us, seeping from my roommates. You're selfish, but you always have been. You want to believe that despite allowing her light to reach human flesh and bone, they will be alive. And maybe you're correct. His lips found my ear once again. But what exactly will they be? You can't preserve a heartless human being inside moonlight for a concerning amount of time and not expect them to be a little wrong. His voice turned into a sing-song. But you don't care. He chuckled. All you care about is burying your guilt, her guilt that lives inside you. You've always known, at the back of your mind, that you belong with us, inside the dark where she twists us into outlines, her mockeries of human beings in the light. He was right. I didn't care what state they were in, as long as they were alive. And above me, the sky grew lighter, a painful glare taking over the moon's glow. The sun. Sunlight exploded through the room, basking every corner, drowning me. But she was already inside my head. She had already won. With a knowing smile, the king flickered from my line of sight, static creeping back into the shadows as sunlight consumed him. I had so many questions to ask, but already my fingers were crumbling away, bleeding into static nothingness that pooled on the ground. I waited for the moon to stitch me back up, like she always did. I was hers, after all. I was made up of her stars. I wasn't Nina Lockhart. I was her outline. Living a grieving woman's fantasy, a shadow who thought she had a soul. This time, the moon laughed lightly inside my head. There was no reason to bring me back. I had served my purpose. I had died so many times and taken advantage of each one. Because what was going to happen when the darkness didn't spit me out? Where would I go? Would I continue living in a stranger's shadow? Or find my own peace? Rest, child. The moon laid me down beside my dead housemates, and I was grateful for her phantom fingers stroking through my hair. Instead of watching myself bleed away into nothing, into stars that would twinkle out and disappear, I laid my head on Rowan's ice-cold chest, wrapping myself around his moonlit corpse. I watched the sun rise across the horizon, bleeding into daylight, rays of gold spilling across his gray skin, spider webbing across the cavern in his chest. And let her take me home.